Hey, welcome everyone. You're here for Power Platform Pictures and AI. So we first want to give a big shout out to our sponsors. Thank you so much for helping with this event and making all of this possible. And we hope that all of these attendees really enjoy this amazing free content that you have access to thanks to these great people on your screen. So let's give some quick introductions before we tell you what we're talking about.
Thank you. I am Aiden Kaskela. I'm the president of Excellent Solutions, Microsoft MVP in business applications, and chapter leader at the Washington, D.C. Power Platform User Group.
And I am Kylie Kiser. I am also a chapter leader for the Washington, D.C. user group. You can tell we have some awesome talent there, so you should come out and join our events, especially now while they're virtual and people are attending from all over the world. And I work at Hitachi Solutions as a solution architect, and I'm also a business applications MVP. So let's talk about what we're going to do today. And you can see on the side there's a quick GIF of the app that we're going to build showing off some of our community all-stars who were willing volunteers to this app, right? But our main goal of this was to show cool things we could do with multiple tools within the Power Platform. And we wanted to do as much of this as possible with a low-code approach. So the goal of our app is to, first of all, take a picture. Then we're going to compare that picture to a bunch of celebrities, which we just got this list from like a Forbes top 100 kind of list, something like that. And then the app will return who you look like and display this all in Teams because, of course, this is a very business use case, right? So let's jump in and show you how to do it. So, Aiden, you want to talk a little bit about the technologies that we're going to use today?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're starting out by using OneDrive. That's going to be our repository for all our images. We're going to use Canvas app to take your picture and then send that out through Power Automate to compare it to our backlog. We're going to use custom connectors to reach out to Microsoft's Cognitive Services, specifically the Face API. And then ultimately, we're going to surface our app in Teams.
Beautiful. So it's demo time, guys. I'm going to jump over and show you a demo of the kind of finished product that we're going to build, and then I'll pass it to Aiden to start building out our solution. All right, so here we are in Teams, and you can see we have a tab here for the app that we built previously called our Celebrity Lookalike. I'm just going to click to get started. It chooses the camera. You'll see with what we're building, you will have the ability to switch cameras. So if you're working with multiple cameras, that would allow you to do that. So if you're on the phone, you could choose if you want to take a picture of someone or take a picture of yourself. Let's take a quick picture. When we click, our button becomes available. We'll click submit. And this is going to process and, like we said, go out to the Face API and tell us who we look the most like. And the app gods were smiling on me today and say that this is who we look the most like. And we'll try again a little bit later and see if it still thinks the same thing. All right, Aiden, I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, so now I'm sharing my screen. And what I want to do before we take a look at anything technical is just show you the Cognitive Services website and some of the things they have to offer. So today we're going to be using the Face API, but there's all kinds of really cool AI-backed features here. Things like computer vision, which tells you if contents contain adult material. Form recognizer, so you can parse out forms. There is language detection and translation, decision engines, all kinds of really cool things. And today we're just going to focus on the Face API. When you set this up in Azure, there's not a whole lot within Azure itself. The Quick Start Guide gives you a good hand, and it tells you to find your keys and endpoints, and you can get that from the keys and endpoints section. And this is how you're going to interact with it. And these keys are like your password for your service. What's really cool here in the Azure portal is that there's a console that you can get started with right here, the API console. And what that is essentially all of the different functions that are available within the API, you can test out right in your browser. So instead of having to set up Postman or something like that, we can just do it right here. And the reason that I really like this is you can put in your subscription key, your little password. And for each of these functions, it tells you exactly what parameters it expects. So this one, we're going to be building a custom connector for later. This is identify a face. So for that method, you can see you can pass in an array of face IDs, a string for the person group, and some other parameters. You can actually run it right here and get your response back. So it's a really, really great way to test it and get comfortable with it without having to fiddle with Postman or some of the other tools that we've had to use in the past. There's still a place for them, of course, but this saves a couple of steps along the way. So the way that we have the demo set up and the pictures set up within Cognitive Services and the way that it handles these things is the top level, kind of your entire collection of people. That is a what's called a person group. Within that, you have different, each person is represented as a person object within that group. And then for each person, you can have one or more faces. The more photos you have of the person, the more accurate it's going to be over time. And this is an AI model, so the more data it has, the better off it's going to be. And that's how we build up our backlog. So I did pre-build a couple of those flows for building out our repository. So I'm going to take a quick look at them in a moment. One is to create that person group. The second one, add a person to the group. And then finally, to train the model. Because it is AI, we need to train it up when we have new information for it. So let's take a look at those and how they're set up. First, we have this is in OneDrive, we have our repository folder. And these are all the celebrities that we're going to compare your face against. And just to keep things simple, we have one image per celebrity. And they're all formatted with the celebrity's name, .jpeg. One thing we had to be really careful about is that there's only one face in the image. So like the one with George Clooney, there's somebody blurry in the background, and that was okay. But in a lot of cases where there was somebody, way in the background, if you could still make out any features, it would pick that up as another person's face and get hung up on that. So all of our celebrity pictures are in this folder. And to create the person group, this is an out-of-the-box connector for the Face API. And given a name and ID, it would create that group. To add the person to the group, we actually had this trigger on when we add a new celebrity to that folder. It would pick up the file name, pull out the celebrity's name based on the file name, create that person record, and then upload the face. And then finally, to train the AI, we wrote a custom connector for that. And if we have time, I'll show how that's built, but if not, it's going to be very similar to what we're looking at today. And that's the whole idea of what we're building today. You're not going to build a face comparison tool for your job. However, there are lots of APIs out there that you can use for your business with real-world applications, and you're going to know how to build them when we're done. We know that for this flow, it's going to be called from Power Apps. So our trigger here will be Power Apps. Simple enough. The first step that we're going to do is we know that we're going to be receiving an image from Power Apps. So we need to save that in OneDrive for Business. So we looked at the repository folder where we have all the celebrities, but we also have an analysis folder. So we need this temporarily to pass details into the Cognitive Services. So we'll store the images to analyze in that folder. File name, it can be anything. So we will give it an expression. It does need to be unique, but we can trick it by giving it a GUID. And we're going to call it a PNG file. content, final content, we're going to ask for it in Power Apps. But before we do that, we need to cast it a little differently. So here it's going to be data URI to binary because it's coming in a certain format. So we need to cast it as that and then pass in the trigger body. So with this, it should create an image in our OneDrive of whatever comes in from Power Apps. Once we have that, we can create a shareable link. So if we look at the identify face, in order to upload a face, we need a URL for the image that has the face. So to get that URL, we can share our image from OneDrive. And it'll be create a share link. The file that we want to share is going to be the file that we've just created. Link type is direct, and the scope will be anonymous. So now that'll give us a URL directly to our image. So continuing with the out-of-the-box stuff, let's go to the Face API, and we will call detect faces. So given that create share URL, now it'll give us back an array of faces in that image. So what's interesting is it doesn't actually save that image. What it does is it identifies some features about those images, about those people. We don't know how it stores it. It's AI. But it does track things like, does the person have glasses, and the shape of their face and things like that. And it gives us a number of faces back. So we know that we're just going to have one image in our picture. So it's easy to create a variable and store our image ID in that variable. That'll let us reference it later. So we'll call that our face ID. It will be a string. And I have an expression I want to copy and paste in here. And this is going to be the output from the detect faces. It'll be the first one and the first ID there. So this should give us our, basically given an image, we'll have an ID for the face that the Cognitive Services knows how to work with. So let's give this a name, and we'll call it Summit Face Detect, and save that. So here's where we kind of hit our limit with what we can do with the included connectors, and that is using the identify, sorry, wrong browser, using this identify function in the Face API. We need to build a custom connector for that. And again, this is no code, and we can use all the configuration values that we have from our console to build our custom connector. So let's take a look at how to do that. This is under Data, go to Custom Connectors. It'll tell you that warning because it tells you every time you do everything, no matter how many times you click Save. And we'll do New Custom Connector. And you can import it from Postman. I'm just going to do it from blank. Makes it nice and easy. Our Scottish Summit connector. I'll give the header a color. Description, and we can skip that. The host is going to be our host is there, base URL, you can leave. And the host we got from Azure. So let's go over to security. We have a couple different authentication methods, basic, API, or OAuth, but we're going to use the API authentication when we look at our face connector. You can see it uses an API key. So we're going to ask that from the user and then pass it through to the Cognitive Service. So here our parameter label will be subscription key. The parameter name is going to be what the service expects. So copy that in. And the parameter location will be in the header. So Right now, all we're saying is where do you connect and how do you authenticate. So let's talk about the definition of that custom connector a little bit. We have our triggers. That is obviously how the flow would start running, but we're not going to build triggers. All we need here is actions, actions to take once we call it. So our first action that we're going to build is going to be find the closest match. The description is, description, our operation ID. This is a unique value. That's what shows up on the left-hand side. Visibility, I want to make this important because it's a super important thing that we're doing here. So let's, we have a couple other things to tell it, the request and the response. The request is the format of the information we're sending out to the API service. And we can get that from here. It's basically this information. See, it's a post, we have the URL, and the actual content that we're sending it. So copy that over. URL, I'm not going to flip back and forth for the sake of, sorry, I am. I'm not going to do it too often though. Take out our URL. The headers, I'm going to put in the content type, and I don't think we need it, but it doesn't hurt. And import that. If you click on the body and edit that from here, you can see that it did pick up the 4 different values that we expect, including the face IDs and the confidence threshold. So the confidence threshold is, this is a decimal, it thinks it's an integer, it's not really sure, so we're going to go ahead and just change that to a number. And go back, and let's check out our response. So the response is what we get back. And again, we're going to import our response from the sample. And the response is down here. And let's test this. So we have to create our connector, and then it'll ask for our subscription key, because that's how it connects. I think I copied in one too many things in our response. Sorry, that's back on our request. So on our confidence threshold number is, there we go, a double. We'll create it, and now I'm going to go back, and once this is created, I'm going to go in and update the body on my response. So I think I had that right the first time, which is always the most fun part of doing these live builds. And let's go test this. We'll update our connector. Now it'll ask us for our subscription key. The subscription key, of course, is our password for connecting to the service. Create a new connection for it. And refresh, and there we go. We have our Scottish Summit connection. So this is essentially all the fields that we identified that we need to run it. So the content type will be application JSON. Person group ID, this is going to be celebs. We get one candidate back. Confidence threshold, say 0. We don't want you to have to be confident at all. And then our Face ID, let's go with the same one that we were using before. Here, and test it. And it works. We get our response back. Validation was successful. So one more time, we'll update our connector, and now we're good to go. So we can start using this from within our flow. So while that's saving, let's pop our flow open again. Our Scottish Summit face detect flow. Edit this, and now where we left off, we had a Face ID, and we needed to pass that into our to the Cognitive Services. So now that we have our custom connector, we can go to Custom. We have our Scottish Summit one that we just added, and find the closest match. We'll call this Scottish Summit connection. Give it a subscription key again. And now we can reuse this connection anytime we need to call out to this API. So for the connector, you can pre-fill values for these, or have default values. So maximum number of candidates, the confidence threshold, you can have defaults there. For the Face ID, I said it's an array, so it looks a little funny, but we're just going to pass in our one variable from here. And this, if everything goes right, this should call out to our custom connector, which passes it along to the Face API and returns the values that we expect. So what do we do with those values that we expect? That gives us a person ID. And if we look back at our at the model here, we know, we pass that in, it'll give us back ID 123. But we don't know what ID 123 means. We need to ask it who that belongs to. So we need to retrieve that person with that ID. Fortunately, there isn't a built-in connector for that. And it would be Face API and then get a person. So the person group ID is going to be celebs, and our person ID, we have all of our values from people that are in there, but we're going to use a custom value, of course. This will be, I actually have an expression for this to use. The first result from find the closest match, it'll give us back a list of candidates, so we'll take the first candidate and the ID of the first person there. So with that, get a person, that will give us the person's name. Now I said that Cognitive Services doesn't store the picture itself, so if we want to present the picture, we have to pull that back out of our OneDrive repository. So back on OneDrive, we are going to get the file content from the tab. File path that we're going to be using, we know that this is always going to be in our repository for celebrities, and then we're going to append the person's name followed by the JPEG for it. So that is the file path, and then ultimately we need to send this back to Power Apps for Kylie to do her magic. So the way that we send those values back is the Power Apps connector, there's an option, respond to a Power Apps or flow. And that gives you options to add output. And this will look familiar if you are a Dataverse user and you want to take these inputs from the user. So we want to give 3 values back. First, we're going to give the user the name that they matched. And this is a dynamic value coming from when we get the person back. We know their name. We're also going to give it the score that you have. And that's an expression. So this isn't the, as Kylie said, it's not how much of, or how confident it is that you're the same person, just kind of a score compared to those images. And I'm not going to look like any of these fine celebrities here, so I'm going to set 0 threshold and multiply it by 100. That way it looks a lot better than, say, 2%. So we'll use that expression. And then finally, we want to return the actual image that we scraped off of OneDrive. So that'll be File. We'll call it the matching image. And just like we needed to convert the format in the beginning, we have to convert it back now to base 64. So we do base 64 of our file content that we read in that step. And we'll save this. So now what we should see from the Power Apps is a flow connector where you pass in an image and you get back these 3 values. So Kylie, do you want to take it from here?
All right, let's jump right into our Power App. So to get started, I created just a shell blank app so you didn't have to watch the kind of thinking progress wheel, right? And the first thing we're going to do is add a background. So I'm just going to upload an image here. We just generated this in Paint 3D, got the dimensions just from capturing the height and width within a Power App. And I'm going to go ahead and set that as the background to this page. Now what I'm going to do is actually duplicate this page to make the 3 pages that are in my app. And I'm going to go ahead and name these now. And a quick reminder, any of these things that you're working on, you do want to make sure that you are naming all of your items on here. So we probably aren't going to get a chance to name everything we're working on today, but it's important for you to do that for screen readers and accessibility and things like that. So let's go back to our welcome page, and all we're going to add here is a quick title, and we're going to add a button to go to the next page. Oh, and before we do that, I do quickly want to update our theme because we want to make sure that we set something different so you know that we're not doing kind of an easy bake oven and trick of the eye, but we're actually building this for you live. Well, kind of live because this is a recorded presentation, but no tricks, right? All right. So we're going to call celebrity lookalike. Let's spell celebrity correctly. And let's make it bigger. And we're going to drop in here. I'm going to actually use one of our icons because we have an icon that is a star. You'll see it came in blue instead of pink from the former label. We're going to make sure we get that in the center. And we want, when we select this, we're going to go over to we're going to navigate to our camera page. And we want to fade because it's cool that way, right? Use Alt, click to jump over there. First formula working correctly. So here's the page where the magic is going to happen. And we're going to have a few components here. We're going to have a drop-down box that will let us choose what camera we're using. We are going to have a camera that is going to be grabbing data from our camera, and we're going to have an image that is going to be showing the image that we're capturing from said camera. And then we're going to have a button that submits all of that to the Power Automate. All right, so I just added in the camera, and we're going to go ahead and add our image right on top of that. If we're being good developers or citizen developers or whatever, makers, whatever we want to be called, then you would want to set the height and width and X and Y of this image to match that of the camera. So you make sure they move together, and we're going to, oops, come on, buddy. We're going to move that guy down to the bottom, and we're going to update him in a minute. All right, so all of our kind of core elements are there. We're going to set our drop down. We want this to be grabbing the list of available devices. So we're going to set this to camera 1 dot available devices. So you can see if we look at that guy, We have a few different cameras listed. And so what that would be is when we're on the phone, that would show you if you want to be taking a selfie or you want to take a picture of someone else. So now let's select the camera. We want to set a few things there. First, we want to set the camera to be whatever camera we've selected. So we'll call this drop-down camera, drop-down 1, there it is, dot selected, dot ID. So that'll tell us what camera we want to use. Perfect. And we also want to set the camera stream rate to 100. And that's just to make sure it's still moving nice and swimmingly, all looks good. And some of those tips and things like that came from Phil Topness, and he has lots of great YouTube videos that we definitely encourage you guys go check out and learn more about. All right, so on this image, what we're going to do is we want it to display an image that's going to be called var image. That means nothing right now, but the really cool thing I like about Power Apps is that we can just define these variables whenever we want, right? So we're going to say there is going to be a variable called var image, so that's what you're going to show. And what we're going to do is do our on select to populate that var image so that you're going to click on that image to make it save an image. So basically what we want it to do is if var image is blank, then set it, and if it has value, then leave it, then turn it back to blank so we can take a new image, right? So what that's going to be, we're going to do our if is blank var image. Then we're going to set var image to the stream from the camera, camera1.stream. Otherwise, we're going to set it to blank. Oops. Make sure we get all the parentheses we need. Excellent. So what that means is right now, if we take a picture, it's going to save it. We click on it again, and it disappears. And you can see our images are not exactly lined up because they're jumping around. But that's a problem for another day. All right, so that's everything that we need for our camera. So let's save an image, and we're going to work on our button down here. Excellent. So our button, what we're going to do is on select. Well, let's first rename it. I'm going to say submit. And then we want on select, we want to call our flow. So we're going to have to do that through our actions menu. So let's go actions, power automate. We're going to choose the Scottish Summit face detect that we created earlier. Excellent. Now we're going to finish our formula by submitting our var image. Now also what we want to do is we want to be able to get the results back from this flow in a variable. So we're going to say set flow response variable. And then we'll put our flow that we're running, and then we're going to go ahead and navigate to our results page. Results. Beautiful. And one thing else we want to do on this button before we move to the other page is we want to make sure that our button only shows up when it should. So we're going to look at our display mode, and we want, if our var image is blank, we don't want to be able to click on that button. So we're going to say if is blank var image, then it's disabled. If it's not blank, then we can click on it. Beautiful. So we'll see if we remove our image here, then comes back, and we'll see disappears, appears again. All right, let's go ahead and submit this. You'll see our flow is processing, and then it should drop us over on our results page. Perfect. Now on our results page, we're going to have a text to show who our match was. And then we are going to show that image of the match. We could theoretically show both images, the one that was submitted and the one we were matched with. But I think just for simplicity, we're just going to show the matched image. And then we'll have a button to go back to the beginning. So let's go ahead and update this to say your celebrity lookalike is, and we're going to add in our flow response variable. Oops. Dot name. With a score of, let's make sure we get a space on both sides. And then we're going to add an exclamation point. All right. Let's make sure I remembered all of my ampersands. I think so. Okay. And we're going to add, let's make that a little bit bigger. Okay, and that'll look better when we get our data in there. And let's add in our image, and we're just going to get our matching image back here. So again, from our flow response variable, dot matching image. Perfect. And then I said we're going to pop a button in there. Just put it down here. I'm going to say start again. And on our select of that button, we want to set var image black to blank so that it will be blank when we go back to the camera screen. And then we're going to go ahead and navigate back to the welcome, back to our camera screen. Excellent. All right, so let's save this guy, and then we're going to test him out right in Teams. Perfect. So if we pop over to Teams to add that guy here, because this clearly has a very strong business purpose, so we need to add it. We're going to choose our Scottish Summit app that we just created. We're going to give it access to our camera, and let's go ahead and test it out. And we're going to click submit. It's going to think. Hopefully it finds my image. I'm not just a ghost in the picture, which did happen in our testing. And there we are, matched with Judge Judy. So looks like we're missing our score here, but probably just something with the data, or maybe I missed an ampersand, and then we can click start again and go back and try again if we want to. So there we are. And we're going to pop back into the PowerPoint for a few final slides. All right, so that's all we have for you. I think we're both available in the chat with any questions, so we encourage you to ask away. We've also included some resources in the deck for you to check out about Power Apps and the camera control and Face API and all of these things. So check those out and make sure you connect with us. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, all the fun places, and we'll encourage you to follow us and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So Aiden, anything else to add as we finish up?
No, just excited that we had an opportunity to present and looking forward to hearing from you and answering any questions you might have.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.